Hey friends, I'm Sabrina, the rookie around here. John and Dick are the old school American fans of F1. Thanks for taking time to listen in on a conversation we had about the 2023 Australian Grand Prix. A lot happened in that race. And in this post-race debrief, the guys and I discussed some of the things that surprised us. The amount of people going off the road, Charles and Sergio struggling in FP3, Sainz, but not Sargent, getting a penalty. McLaren and Mercedes struggled. The number of red flags and, of course, Crashmageddon. Be on the lookout for who Dick calls ruthless. Hope you enjoy our conversation. Australian Grand Prix. A lot happened at this race. So let's get the things that, I don't know, maybe you guys will say this, you could have seen this coming. Maybe you'd say you didn't see this coming. But free practice through quali. Dick, I'd like you to just give us some of your highlights, any things that you noted that, especially leading up to the race, would have been interesting.
A number of things. One, I have to say I was a little bit surprised. You know, we're 3 races into the season. Little bit surprised that we had as much, you know, I'm going to call it carnage as we had in free practice and quali. And it's not really carnage, and there was a whole bunch of cars damaged, but it was just people going off the road, you know, and some of that was the conditions. We had rain, so we had to deal with that a little bit in free practice too, I think, which then gave us probably a fairly green track for free practice 3. I never really specifically heard that, but I'm just making that assumption that it was probably, you know, the track had been washed and was now green. And you know, it's really easy for teams to kind of arrive at a setup and then the track changes dramatically. And then you kind of have to go back and re-baseline the car. And that, you know, we saw both Sergio and Charles both struggled a little bit in free practice 3. And that may have been, I've kind of wondered about it, you know, if they just, you know, the engineering side for Red Bull and Ferrari that was taking care of Sergio and Charles, maybe they were maybe a little bit more caught out than the other side of the garage, perhaps. I don't know. You know, in terms of, you know, every time the guys went off, it seemed like there would wind up being gravel all over the place. Just because of the gravel that gets laid up. And, you know, speaking as a driver, I can tell you that there's some tracks, man, you can just drop a wheel. And next thing you know, the guy behind you is skating around because he's essentially trying to drive on marbles. And that's always kind of exciting. As far as the way quali went, I know it was probably a huge disappointment for Piastri to not make it out of Q1, but I think everybody's kind of like, yeah, the McLaren is it's so finicky to drive. Historically, I mean, you think about it, even with the rule change last year, Daniel Ricciardo couldn't come to grips with that McLaren. You know,
That's a good point.
He struggled with the old McLaren from the old rule set in 2021, even though he did win a race. They then come in with a whole brand new set of rules and all that, and yet only Lando Norris is the one that could seem to drive the car. Piastri, I think, has actually done a pretty darn good job of showing that, hey, I may be a rookie, but I've been given this car that at best is finicky. And he's showing that he's certainly worthy. So I don't think it, you know, stuff like that, I don't think it did any damage to him psychologically, although I would think that it probably was just a personal disappointment more than anything else, that he would like to have done better in front of his home crowd. But would Ricciardo have done a whole lot better? I don't know, because I think Ricciardo, after having dealt with that probably pretty ridiculous, unpredictable car, I think his psychology had been so damaged that it definitely had been damaged for him. But I think Piastri's too new to know any better, maybe. Anyway, it's going to be really interesting to see how Piastri does over the season. And are these upgrade packages that McLaren is bringing, okay, maybe the car will be faster, but is it only faster in the hands of Lando? You know, is it still unpredictable? And how much longer is Lando going to put up with this? So I think that's the other question, because, you know, if you're McLaren, you got to have both cars scoring points consistently, because there's money at the end of the year that's big dollars. And so having a car that only one of your guys can drive doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Anyway, that's kind of my take. I'm not maybe. I've gone off on a tangent here, but I think it's a good thing to kind of think about, because McLaren's got a problem. Mercedes has that same sort of problem, except both guys, they're just dealing with a car that's just difficult, and both guys kind of have their arms around it. Whereas McLaren, historically, we're 2.5 years or 2.5 seasons now where we've got a car that apparently only one guy can drive.
Yeah. I like how you compared that, or gave enough connection to the Mercedes, because I don't know that I necessarily would have drawn the conclusion you just presented, but I think it's very valid analysis. John, do you want to jump in on any of this, or you want to move on to the race?
Oh, let's move on to the race.
Okay. So what are the highlights that stick in your mind?
Well, there's several things in there. How many red flags can you have in a race and still have a race? That was pretty interesting. One of the things that I just really didn't understand was, and maybe Dick has a take on this, but Sergio got a penalty for barging around, and Logan Sargent, took somebody off.
I think you mean Carlos Sainz. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I think you mean Carlos Sainz, right? Not Sergio.
Sorry, yeah, Sainz.
Yeah, go ahead.
One of those S words. Yeah, Carlos, he got a penalty, and Logan is sitting there going, well, he's got to have a smile on his face because he didn't get penalized. So it looked like the same thing to me. I'd like to know what the stewards thought was different about that. But so many crashes. That just was kind of, made me wonder about these guys, or maybe their cars are just so hard to manage. Frankly, it was an exciting race. Once again, there's Alonso doing just good work and really bringing the thing forward. So all good stuff. Good race.
Well, and coaching his pit wall during the race on how to interpret the rules so that they can maximize to their advantage. Good grief. It's so funny. And the capacity, the mental capacity that guy has is pretty incredible. But we've talked about that. So.
Yep.
Okay.
If you look up the word ruthless, I'll just close with this. If you look up the word ruthless, Fernando's picture's right there in the dictionary.
That's right.
That's right. That is so true. Let's look at the actual, what we've been quietly calling amongst the three of us. I don't know if it's become viral and other people have used the term, but Crashmageddon. I feel like it was very confusing. The factors that the FIA was weighing in their decision-making, listening to the commentary, it seems like there were a ton of things that they were putting into their analysis, but post-race, it seems that many feel like the entertainment aspect was a huge factor. Do you agree with the way that the FIA made the call? If so, why? If not, what do you think could have been done to handle it better?
Dick, I'll let you take that one.
Yeah, it's a kind of a loaded, little bit of a loaded gun there.
That's why I think John gave it to you.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Yeah,
you're welcome.
We've seen it before, where you have a big crash in other series, and they will, 4 laps to go, whatever, and they'll stop the race, clean up the carnage to give the fans the opportunity to see the last lap be run under a green flag. And so obviously that's entertainment value there for sure. I don't know. To me, I have a little bit of a mixed feelings about those sorts of deals, in that there is a certain degree, it's a little bit artificial or contrived, maybe is the better word. But on the other hand, without the fans being entertained, they don't necessarily come back. If your guy's not leading and now all of a sudden, hey, there's a shot that my guy, could, pull off a bonsai, 2 or 3 laps and, move up a position or 2 or whatever. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they probably would feel that way. But on the other hand, somebody else is going to say, well, my guy got screwed. So, I don't, it's always going to be, kind of the what I always call the blindfolded lady with the scales, right? The laws of justice. And so I think it could be argued either way. Like I said, it's a loaded gun for sure.
John?
There's just no way to make it fair. And it comes back to the limitations under the rules, the current rules. And I really favor some coming together of the minds to create a rule that says, regardless of how many laps are scheduled, regardless of how much time remains, under some circumstances, when we have this kind of ending to the race, we're going to run X number of laps, and everybody, maybe you bring everybody in, you put everybody on new tires, the same tires. I don't know how you do it exactly, but you don't leave it down to the question like you had when Hamilton and Max were going at it at the last race of the year, and it was down to the championship coming, who won the championship.
Right.
Then it looks like somebody's putting their finger on the scales. So I favor some methodology, and I don't care. They need to come up with it. They need to do it now. This is obviously not the first time, even this season, that this kind of thing has happened. And it's going to happen again. And they need to come up with some strategy that everybody understands, that puts them on a relatively equal footing and lets them go at it and have a race. It's both entertaining and it's as fair as you can get in an unfair situation.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. The justice person in me did not like this. The entertainment side of me said, I can make the argument, as you guys said earlier, for the fans who were there. But then I also think that's part of the world of racing. You take the proposition that maybe it does not end the way that you think it will. So you do risk that. You may not be entertained because it rained out and the clock ran out and you can't finish it the way you wanted it to. So I do think that methodology seems to be the best way to make this as fair in an unfair situation. Well, this has been great. Thank you guys for talking about the Australian Grand Prix. I look forward to future conversations. That ends this conversation. But rest assured, we'll keep talking and you can keep listening in, because we're just two guys, a girl, and F1. For John, Dick, and me, thanks for listening.